Today I'm going to take a few moments to talk a little bit about the two tournaments that I've played in recently. I want to talk about some of the things that went well and some of the things that could have improved. Meow. Let's do a tournament recap and talk a little bit about some of the lessons I've learned. Let's do it right now. For tuning in to my YouTube channel. My name is Kenny. Some of you may know me as Kennie Kat. I am a competitive golfer, and this channel is dedicated to my journey on what it takes to become a better competitive golfer. Alright, I've recently played two different tournaments for the Golf Week Amateur Tour and the US Am Tour, which is formerly the Golf Channel Tour. Let's jump straight into the first tournament. I played at True North, the Monument course. And we're going to open up our Arcos app, take a look at the strokes gained stats, since now that we have that, and then go through a couple of select holes. All right, as you can see, I shot at 93. It was not a good round, and the data shows me that I lost almost 14 strokes compared to a 5 handicap golfer. Most of those coming from my driving, my approach, and my putting. But as you all know, I've recently started working on my putting, so it's definitely something that I am aware of. Overall, if we look at the synopsis of it, I made way too many doubles and not enough pars, and that ultimately was what led me to shooting such a poor score. The biggest things I noticed that I lost 4.2 strokes on my over 200-yard approach shots. I lost 4 strokes because of penalties off of the tee, and I lost 3 strokes from the fairway from just poor shots. Let's take a look at a couple of holes. So oddly enough, I've been doing my swing training for about, I want to say 10 weeks, maybe 12 weeks now. And this was, the beginning of this tournament was right at the first jump. So all of my speed kicked in. And this is something that they explain to you, that you're going to see a massive jump in the speeds at different phases during the training. And you don't really know when they're going to come, but this one definitely did. I picked all my tee clubs before the event, but unfortunately I was hitting my tee clubs about 15 to 20 yards longer. So that's kind of a reality for the rest of the day. Hole number 1, I had a 2 hybrid picked off of the tee. I expected that it was going to go no further than 230 yards into this little pinchy area here. That wasn't the case. I absolutely flushed it, and it carried well past 230 plus yards. Hit this cactus that was in this right area and dropped down. Had to chip out sideways. And then I had a relatively easy wedge shot to the green. It was about 100 yards to the flag. I took a nice little easy gap wedge and ended up hitting it almost 20 yards longer than where I thought it was going to go. And at this point, I must have thought that it was probably just first tee adrenaline. I didn't really anticipate that this was my speed jump kicking in. First tee adrenaline kicks in. I hit my shots a bit longer, and I always try to compensate for that. Jumping over the hole 3, I had this hole pegged as just cutting that corner with the 3-wood. I knew a driver would be too much, but I hit my 3-wood pretty darn well, as you can see, 269 yards, and I almost ended up in the bunker on that back ledge. The ball was on a severely downhill lie position, and instead of just, laying up and going for the green in 3, I decided to take a 5-iron and hit a shot which I probably had no business doing because it was just way too difficult of a shot, and ended up shanking it and pushing it out of bounds. Had to hit the ball back into play, which obviously once you're out of position, you got to get back in position. But then I hit a 9-iron thinking that I would land this shot about 140 some odd yards, and it flew again another 10 yards past the point where I was going to land it, and I ended up leaving myself a 60-plus foot putt. I did end up making that putt to save bogey, but it was at this point I realized that my speed training had jumped and clicked in because I hit that 9-iron way further than I was expecting. So I started to become a little bit more uncomfortable over my iron shots, not really knowing what the distance was going to be. On to hole 7, I adjusted, so I hit a 7-iron, which for me is normally about a 170 shot. And this one ended up carrying about 180 yards, and it was uphill, so the actual shot probably went about 183, 185. And unfortunately, because my putter wasn't working well, I 3-putted from there. Hole 9 was really good. I hit a decent drive. It was into wind, uphill, and I was able to get this 6-iron up behind the green on this par 5, and I should have been easily able to convert from that point to make an easy birdie, but again, a poor chip and then another poor 3-putt. I ultimately ended up bogeying a hole that I was pretty much on in 2 shots. Hole 13 was a great example of trying to do way too much with not enough club. So we had this green that was downhill, and it was about 185 to maybe 190 yards to where I wanted to land the ball. And I knew that my irons had been carrying a bit longer for the day, so I decided to go with a 7-iron. And instead of just swinging at the normal speed that I should swing at for a 7-iron, I tried to extend my speed and just swing out of my shoes at it. Ended up pulling this 7-iron way left and lost the ball on a par 3, which is the worst thing you could possibly have happen. I had to take a desert drop from this very bad lie because the ball went out on a grassy uphill slope. I ended up hitting it way too short and then putted it through the break, ended up 3-putting again, making myself a triple on a par 3. Ugh. And then hole 14, as you can kind of see, this round has just already gone off the rails. Hole 14, I had a 4-iron picked because I knew that that pinch point was going to be way too tight to hit a driver. And for whatever reason, everyone else was hitting driver, and I did something very stupid. I decided to hit driver. And of course, I hit my driver exactly where I thought it was going to go, and it flew into this brush and debris. It just was too tight of a hole to hit driver on. I should have hit a 4-iron. That mistake ended up compounding another mistake because I hit a 6-iron to try to recover it and ended up putting the 6-iron back into the trees and lost that ball. Fortunately, I hit a 7-iron out of the mess, but by then I was on pace to make yet another triple. So as you can see, making 2 triples back to back, you've basically destroyed your chances of even making a good score, let alone winning a competition. So I do want to talk about some things that went well. For a relatively tight course with fairways that are like 50 yards wide at most points, I did a pretty good job hitting all my fairways in regulation. I hit 71% of my fairways in regulation. That was definitely something that went well throughout the entire round. But things that can improve is I didn't stick to my game plan. It's okay to make bad shots. It's not okay to make bad decisions on the golf course, especially when you have all the time in the world to figure out what you're going to do and I have a strategy beforehand. There was no reason for me to choose some of the clubs that I chose off of the tee, knowing that they were going to be way too much club or way too dangerous. Overall, I think that is something that not just needs to do better or improve, but I just need to stick to my plan. Another area where I can also improve is I attempted a few shots that were just outside of my skill level and just outside of my comfort zone. It's okay to, go for a risk when you need to in order to make a score, to win a tournament, but perfect example of that hanging live 5-iron that I had on that par 5, there was no reason to hit that shot. I couldn't get enough club on it, and I should have always hit a 7-iron to lay that shot up. I was still going to be in good position to attack the green and go for a birdie putt. I think I just got way too greedy and just let ego get in the way and just tried to play out of my comfort zone. This brings me to the number 1 lesson of my top 3 lessons from today. Accept my current limitations and leave ego out of it. Just because I can't hit a shot today doesn't mean that I can't learn how to hit that shot another day. I think this is an important rule that I'm going to take away from this because although I want to be and get better than where I am currently, I just have to have the courage to play within myself. When there are shots that I face that I know I can't successfully complete 70 to 80% of the time, I have to have the courage to step back, play within my ability, and accept the realities of what I've brought that day. The next tournament I want to look at was my USM Tour. We played at TPC Scottsdale, the Champions Course, and I shot an 87, which is a little bit better than the 93 I shot before, but ultimately this round was a lot more level-headed, and I stuck to my game plan. My putter just wasn't quite working with me that day. As we take a look at the strokes gain information, I lost just about 7 strokes compared to a 5 handicap. My driving was really good. Short game, as always, was on point. Approach wasn't too bad, but where I ultimately lost the most of my strokes was in my putting. The things that hurt me is I took 1 penalty shot off of the tee, which we'll talk about. I did lose a lot of strokes from putts inside of 10 feet. And then I also, again, need to improve my ability to hit shots inside of that 100 to 150 yard range, which we discussed in the other strokes gain video. Ultimately, this round was pretty even. I just made way too many bogeys and not enough pars, and that's what ultimately led me to shooting an 87. Let's take a look at a couple of holes. All right, we started on hole 10. I started off with a very beautiful drive, hitting it 286 yards out into the fairway, just left. Knew that gave me a slight good approach to the green. Hit a 4-iron because I knew I wasn't going to take a 3-wood to challenge this green. There were just way too many bunkers there, and I figured laying up short of the green would put me in a good position to have a nice little chip. Hit a perfect 4-iron, and then I got up to the green and a 50-degree wedge, just a little half shot. I got a little too aggressive with it and tried to get too cute with it and roll it down this down slope and just slide it into the pin. And unfortunately, it just moved a little bit too far behind the hole. And from there, I putted out of the fringe and left myself to about 5 feet, which I thought was going to be a pretty easy putt. Unfortunately, I 3-putted from 5 feet. I definitely wish I could go back and take my time and just, refocus on that putt again. The back 9 went relatively well. We're actually going to jump straight over to hole 17, where I think I played a very, very, very good hole. I hit a very solid drive out into the right edge of the fairway, and for whatever reason, I just didn't make good contact with this 6-iron. I found my ball in this little rough area and I hit a gap wedge up to the green. It was very short. I thought it was going to be a little bit longer, but I didn't calculate slope. So I had myself a 50-foot putt, lagged it up there to about 3 feet from the hole, ended up making par. This was one of those things that set a really good momentum and just gave me really good confidence to stay level-headed throughout the rest of the round. So I'm going to jump forward to a couple of holes. I went on to hole 2, hit myself a really nice drive, and unfortunately I landed in this massive divot. I mean, this divot couldn't have been any larger than it was. And I remember seeing the ball and I remember seeing my playing partners look at it like, oh man, that's a tough break. But to me, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was just like, hey, this is kind of the stuff that happens. So I'm happy at how I handled my reaction to the divot. I just went to play the shot to the best of my knowledge. It was just so deep that it caught the face and closed it. Ended up sending this 9-iron straight left, but I was able to make a conservative chip and get up and down and save bogey. Now on to hole 4. This is the only mistake that I made throughout the entire round. So I got to this par 5 knowing that it was short enough for me to get to it in 2. And of course, what did I do? Decided to change my driving feel, to try to swing out of my shoes, and I hit the biggest push cut and blocked it straight right. My provisional was in the sand, so I had nothing really to do but other than play it out with the chunky 8-iron. Didn't quite get all of the club, hit it out, and then I left my approach shot short. I don't know what happened, maybe a lapse in judgment, but ultimately it ended up with me making a triple on this hole. Definitely not something we want to see from a completely avoidable error of not trying to get too aggressive off the tee. I just really couldn't get the putter rolling to save par when I was putting myself in position that would likely get me into a bogey. But overall, I lost all my momentum, and then I got to the final hole, which was the 9th hole, ended up rolling in a 7-footer for par, and that kind of felt really good to finish the round. Things that went well at TPC Scottsdale. I drove the ball exceptionally well, excluding that one hole. I didn't hit a lot of fairways, but my misses were not too bad. I was putting the ball in really good spots and I was missing in great locations that allowed me to attack a lot of greens. Another thing that I did well was I didn't allow any of the bad circumstances that happened to really affect me mentally. Whether it was I thought a ball was lost, or whether it was we were searching for one of my balls for 4 or 5 minutes, or I was caught in a deep divot, I kept a level, cool head the entire time. And I'm very proud of myself that I didn't allow the circumstances to become so big that they caused me to get frustrated and start building anxiety and creating tension. Here are some things that I can improve. Lag putting. We already made a video about that. I'm sure you've already seen it. I've been working religiously on my lag putting. It's something that I haven't practiced a lot, and as a result of not practicing it, I've kind of let my touch slip, so we gotta get lag putting going. If I'm gonna be leaving myself 30-foot and 40-foot putts occasionally, I gotta have the confidence that I can get it down in 2. Another thing that could improve is my iron directions are a little off. I hit most of my shots long and left today, so that's something that I need to take a look at. Although I did hit 44% of my greens in regulation, a lot of my shots, especially with scoring clubs, were very long and very left. So I think that I need to just kind of, recheck my grip, my posture, and my alignment just to make sure that I'm swinging down the direction that I want to swing, so I'm not seeing so many shots get pulled long and left. All in all, if I didn't 3-putt on that first hole from 5 feet and I didn't decide to get too ego-driven on that par 5, I would have come out with a pretty good score in the low 80s to high 70s, and that's exactly the kind of golf that I need to play to win tournaments. Now let's talk about the second important lesson that I learned from today. It's okay to hit a poor shot. It is not okay to make a mental error. One small mental error can really add up to a big score. We got all the time to play these rounds. These are 4.5, 5-hour rounds. Everyone's out here playing to win. Everybody understands that you want to take as much time as possible over every single shot and give it the focus that it needs to be. There's no need to make mental errors. Stick to the strategy. If there's a shot that I'm playing, it needs to be a shot I'm comfortable with. And if it's not a shot I'm comfortable with, I need to find a shot that I'm comfortable with. There's just no need to make mental errors when we have all the time in the world to play a shot that's going to give us a good result. And my third and final lesson is momentum is everything. It's important to give every stroke, chip, and putt the focus they deserve. Momentum on the golf course is built in drops, but it's lost in buckets. This is one of the things that I realized looking back on this tournament, because I didn't really do anything bad. I just didn't build the momentum. Whether that putt's to save par or to even save bogey from a good putt, having that momentum and that confidence builds, and it gives you the ability to take good feelings onto your next shots and your next swings. And ultimately, when you get in that rhythm, that's when you really start playing well and shooting some really good scores. I've got a really packed calendar this month. I've got 3 tournaments coming up. I've got my final major of the year, which is going to be a 2-day event at TPC Scottsdale Stadium and Champions Course. We got a couple of other events in there. They're going to be every week after that. So I'm super excited to finish the year strong. I'm going to make sure that we focus a lot more on the things that I need to improve and keeping these lessons at heart as I continue to go through practice rounds and go through my next tournaments. Thank you very much for watching my YouTube channel. That's really all I got for you. Deuces, people. Let's keep it